my Gluttony play, which is the cautionary tale of Big Ed Delahanty. I've also written a longer play about Big Ed, who is a real person. He's a baseball player at the turn of 2 centuries ago, who was a big star in the 1880s and 90s, and died tragically in 1903 after being thrown off a train going over Niagara Falls for drunken disorderly conduct. His body was found 10 days later, missing a leg, being completely naked, and nobody knows what happened between the time he was kicked off the train and when they found him dead. I first found out about Big Ed, and I'm a big baseball fan. See all the Dodger bobbleheads behind me are actually my brothers, but I've been going to Dodger games my whole life, and big baseball fan. And we went to the Baseball Hall of Fame. My brother, my father, my uncle, and I all went. And my uncle was reading Hall of Fame baseball trivia, and he said, "What baseball player died in this way, whose body was found at the bottom of Niagara Falls?" And we were like, "What are you talking about?" And I started reading about Big Ed, and it was like, man, there was so much stuff going on in his life. He was an all-star. He was very well paid for baseball players and for the time period especially. And nobody actually said it in any of the things that I read, but weaving all the different facts together, that he was kind of in the twilight of his career. He was 35, which is not the twilight of anything except for maybe a professional athletic career. So he wasn't as good. His numbers weren't as good. The hometown team, he's from Cleveland, and the Cleveland baseball team changed its name to the name of his great rival, something that no team had ever done before, and I don't think has ever done since. There have been homages to players, but they actually changed their name to the Cleveland Naps after Nap Lajoie. He was not doing well. His team wasn't doing well. He wasn't home. He wanted to be home. He had an opportunity to play for his good friend in New York, which is where his wife and his daughter were. He couldn't make that happen. And then he starts threatening people on a train with a straight razor, and he's getting super drunk. And the next thing we know, he's kicked off a train and he's found dead at the bottom of a waterfall. And just, it seemed very clear to me that he was depressed, that he was not being cared for, because it was 1903, and first of all, nobody was dealing with anybody's psychology at that point. We were just getting to the beginnings of the things that would lead to Sigmund Freud. Like, we're way far away from any of that. And then at the time, especially for men, and especially men who are in professions where strength and resolve and constitution are so prized, it was probably never considered how he was dealing with the fact that there were these big complicated things going on in his life. And then combining that just with celebrity culture, when I was working on this, I think Heath Ledger had just died, and a version of the play had quotes from Heath Ledger and Whitney Houston and Robin Williams, and just because there was, around the death of Big Ed Delahanty, there was this question of, did he commit suicide? Did he jump into Niagara Falls? Was he murdered? Like there's Steve McNair quotes in here, and other, things like did somebody rob him because he was showing off this jewelry? Also, there was an attempted assault on a woman on the train. Was somebody mad at him for that? Or was it an accident? Was he just stumbling around drunk, dark, over the ridge above Niagara Falls Gorge, and he just fell in? And the predominant sentiment, nobody really knows for sure, is that it was an accident. We don't know, but there's no specific indication of murder or suicide, so they say it was an accident. But the big question about the play, and it was very interesting because I usually don't write about real people, but being sensitive to a person who has living descendants, a person who we know a bit about, but we don't know a huge amount about, because it was at a time in history where baseball wasn't as big of a deal, so his every move wasn't recorded and anthologized the way that even by the time we get to Babe Ruth in the 20s and his youth in the teens, we know a lot more about it than somebody who's was born in the 1870s. So it's an interesting play. It's also presented as a old-timey vaudeville show. So there's an ensemble that are the train conductor, that are the woman on the train who he assaulted, that are fans, that are his teammates. There's a bunch of different people who come in and out of his life as these sort of larger-than-life vaudevillians tell this story. The only one who isn't a vaudevillian is Big Ed himself, who brings you into his story. He's not a terribly likable person. He's very selfish and self-involved. He does not apologize for what he does to this woman. Fortunately, he was stopped before things got horrible, but he scared the shit out of her, and never had to deal with that in his life. He also left his wife and his daughter totally destitute, spent their money, and at the same time, it's never pleasurable to see somebody suffer. I think it's against human nature to wish ill upon anybody, even as hard as that can be, no matter what they've done or what they stand for, even. And I think it's an interesting play of the complexity of celebrity worship, how discussions of everything from mental illness to just not feeling great have evolved over the decades and centuries, and how many people have we lost throughout history because people around them weren't talking to them, weren't having heartfelt conversations with them, weren't checking in. And it's a Big Ed story is really amazing. So the long play is called Big Ed the King of Swattsville, but this is the short, the cautionary tale of Big Ed Delahanty. It's been done as a radio play, which I thought was really effective. It's been a number of stage readings, and I think it's going to be produced early next year, assuming we can all do what we do. So Seven Deadly Tens is available at originalworkspublishing.com and also Amazon. And Original Works can also handle all of the licensing if you're interested in producing any or all of the plays. They're really great folks. They'll take good care of you.